sound okay? We're in good shape there, huh?
Yeah, we're in real good shape. How's it going, Steve?
Just dandy, by golly. Look at all the sunshine we got here, and oh
I
my, look
know.
at all the weeds.
I know it. Folks who aren't around from around here don't realize that we've had rain for almost a whole week straight. It really didn't stop there at all, did it?
No, the news said they call it a river of rain
Yeah.
and weather. Wow, that was something.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. Of course, folks who get rain a lot of times, they want it to stop. They want the sunshine. For me, born and raised in Arizona, I take it when I can get it. I really liked having it. Although I got to tell you, with three little boys inside the house, not being able to send them outside, it got a little stuffy. So I am glad that the sun finally came back out.
Yeah. Well, you can always put them out there naked and just let them around and play in the mud.
That's right. They would for sure remember that. Well, folks, my name's Dave. This is Steve Edwards. We're real excited to have another week here of Ask Steve, where we come and just answer your mule and donkey questions. Steve is coming to you live from Queen Valley Mule Ranch out in Queen Valley, Arizona, and I'm coming to you from my home out here in Gilbert, Arizona today. So it was one of those days where I was just like, you know what? I'm going to stay home, I'm going to relax, and I'm going to get myself all set for a whole bunch of mule questions. So I've got a bunch of questions lined up here, Steve, but before we get started with those questions, I just want to welcome everyone. If this is the first time you're ever joining us, so glad to have you here. We have a lot of fun for about an hour, and there's really no question that's off limit. So if you have any questions that you want to ask about mules, donkeys, tack, gear, and for those of you who have lower standards, horses, feel free, put them in the comment section. I put them out in front of Steve, and he answers them one by one. So just be sure that we'll get to it if you put it there in the comment section. There's two other things that I want to share. Number one is please share this broadcast on your wall. Please click the little share icon and put it on your wall and let folks know that we're doing a broadcast all about mules and donkeys. One of the questions came in from, I think it was like North Dakota, somewhere like that, says, I just don't see folks riding mules and donkeys out here. Well, the truth is, mule and donkey folk are everywhere. It's just we've got to get out there and find our communities where folks are at. And once you find them, boy, that community gets real tight real quick. So share the broadcast on your wall. And then the last thing is, don't feel any intimidation or feel like any question is stupid or too easy or too simple. Put everything in that comment section there and we'll get to them. Steve, I'm sure you answer a lot of the same questions over and over and over, but for the folks who hear them for the first time, they're pretty groundbreaking, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's amazing. Just about time I think I've told everybody a particular thing. I turn around, some new mule person's in there, and they're wanting to learn, and that's okay. You know, if, it's like I tell folks in doing these clinics, or like even now, like you were saying, even if I got to tell it to you 100 times, let's get it. You know, yeah. I just love this past week, the past 3 days, Dave. I've had people call me and say, you know what? I've been in these mules, well, like a lady today. I've been doing this stuff all my life, and I found out I've been doing the majority of it wrong, you know. And she just sent me, we're using the digital age. This is pretty cool, training by the digital. But she sent me pictures of a mule she just got with a saddle on it that they bought with it. And want to know where it was fitting, how it was doing good. And that's awesome to be able to do that and be able to look at the pictures and say, okay, a little bit more to the right, and then away we go, you know. So, and it's also tough to say, I'm sorry, that is not the mule saddle, which happens a lot, right, Dave?
Yep, happens quite a bit. As a matter of fact, we've got a question today from someone using your saddle, using your pad, saying, I've got some problems. So it'll be real fun to get to that. And that's one of the things that I love about this forum, this format, is that we get to answer those questions, and you don't feel like you get stuck or you have no hope, or it's just the lot that you've been handed. There's always something more that we can wind up trying. So I just want to acknowledge a couple folks. D. Witt left a really nice comment. D says, just wanted to say thanks for reining tip last week. It makes a difference in the cue when I tip my hand to palm up position and cue with my leg. My cotton actually stepped over just like she Like she knew what she was doing all this time. I've been plow reining her to turn, but won't have to do that anymore. So that's real good to hear, isn't that?
There we are. And Cotton is a donkey, by the way.
There you go.
You know?
I got another question about mules and donkeys and which one that we'll get started with here in a second. We've got Haley watching. Haley says, hey, Steve.
Yeah. Hey, Haley.
Good to have you there. And Pam Costello, she's here, and she says hi. And let's go ahead and we'll start with Pam. She went ahead and she's here live. She put in her question. So let's go ahead and start with her. She says, hi, Steve. I'm going to be purchasing a saddle, breech, and breast collar from you. What information do I need to know before I order? And what I'd really like to know, Steve, is when we're talking about information, those are kind of the standard things. What do they need to know about placing like saddle size, how many cinches, what size cinches? Can you just kind of give me a rundown of the essential things that folks need to know before they go out and invest in a saddle and all that tack and gear?
You bet, and it is a big investment. You know, I understand it's tough when people go ahead and they, like this couple that I got a email now and a text that the saddle came with the mule. You know, and a lot of people have custom made saddles and stuff, and you know the knowledge is out there because you and I are putting it out. We're writing articles and this sort of thing, and we're touching folks, but still, sometimes it's too late. And so here, you take the average saddle maker, they'll say, okay, take a wire and put it across the wither, across the center of the back in two places, and on the hip, and then give me 3 measurements, and I will build you a saddle and go from there. And so let's just address that one first. If we take and we measure this mule in January with him fat and sitting around, and then we measure him again in July after he's been used, we're going to have different measurements. And besides that, just like this lady was saying earlier, they're in Ohio, they've been tightening the front cinch all this time and wondered why the area was so dry and stuff, and we answered the questions for them there. So the saddles, the rigging plates have to be in their particular place. So you have the front rigging plate, you have the rear rigging plate, and the way they come is at the pommel, that's full rig, and then at the middle is 3/4 rig, and then at the back is center fire. So you are 7/8 rigging and center fire. So or 3/4. So those rigging plates are important because that's what holds the front of the saddle into place. The problem is if you put it in the normal place, which mine is not, then you're still going to have some cinch moving. Also notice that the front cinch is at an angle, it's going to pull the saddle forward. So what do you need to know? You need to see that the back of the saddle needs to be open where the two plates come together so that we don't rub on the spine. That's really important. You'll see that saddles that are designed for mules will have that gap open in the back so that it doesn't rub on the spine. The other thing is the placement of the rear D-ring. The rear D-ring needs to be ahead in order to catch the sweet spot on the animal's belly so that the cinch will stay in place, because the back cinch is the most important. So just this in general is basically what it amounts to, Dave. What I need to know, I just need to know your height and weight, and then I can send you a saddle. All of my saddles are designed for a skeletal structure, not muscle mass. Muscle mass changes. Within 1 weekend ride, your mule, your donkey can drop 50 to 100 pounds really easy. Well, the downside is what we start doing then, Dave, is we start adding saddle pads because we want to help take some of the pressure off. Well, the more saddle pads you add, what happens? Then the saddle starts rolling. Then you got to tighten your cinches tighter. Now, poor mule is now paying the price. So, as you know, I've only got the 1 saddle pad is all you need. My rigging plates are in the right place. So basically, if you need a saddle, you basically just call and you talk to me. And I say, okay, give me your height and weight. And then I ask you for cinch size, give me an idea of your height and weight of your mule. And then I go from there.
That's awesome. And what you talked about there with the idea of, okay, you add more saddle pads, now it starts to roll. You correct one problem, but you create 1, 2, 3, 4 more problems. And best case scenario is you see that new problem that gets created and you can correct it right away. Worst case scenario, you think you've corrected the problem, but now you've got another problem that's going to rise up 6 months, 8 months, maybe even 24 months down the road, and it's going to be too late for correction at that point. So it's real important to ask questions. It's real important to make sure that you know what you're doing as soon as possible. And one of the things that I love about several of the videos that you've put out there, Steve, on YouTube is you say, hey, folks, you're going to make mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes, but just the past is the past. I'm free at last, and you move forward with what you know. So going on that question there, the another question that came in was this idea of how can you actually make a saddle that fits, all mules and donkeys? That's what it came in. How can you say that you've got a saddle that will fit all mules and donkeys? Do you want to explain that a little bit? Because that's tough for people to hear. You talked a little bit about it already, but kind of go into that more specifically.
When you walk into a tack store to look in saddles, you see all these different brand names. All different brand names. The guidelines for the majority of equine equipment is the quarter horse. So it doesn't make any difference what brand saddle you buy. It will have 2 different basic trees. Semi-quarter horse, full quarter horse. Narrow, semi, wide, full. One saddle, one tree, I should say, is on all those saddles fitting every horse in the United States. Why wouldn't you think that I could make one saddle that's going to fit every mule and donkey in that same thought? Now, here's what I did. Before I even begin to start thinking about selling saddles to somewhere, we're a working ranch, Dave, and so my pack saddles, the arches floated, the bars floated, and the arches, I can make them wider or narrower on a pack saddle. So that's how I began to get my angles. Then as we started working on the pack saddle bars, we took cottonwood and we kept shaping the bars. But what we found out, Dave, but because of the arches being able to move and the bars floating, we found that the closest to the spine is what's going to make the animals the most comfortable. So we don't want to be hitting the spine, but we want to be roughly about an inch, 7/8 to 1 inch from the center of the spine out to where my bar goes. So here's basically the 3 fingers. Here's my spine. Here is the bar for the right side of my saddle. Here is the bar for the left side of my saddle. And those sit right within an inch, 7/8 to an inch away from the spine. That's how I can fit every single mule. Now, I just had a lady in Florida. She sent me pictures of this poor mule's back, and she's going to have to give it some rest. It came with the saddle, and then she used any kind of saddle somebody would loan her. Well, she started naming off to me, Dave, all the different brand names. Well, they're all using the same tree. So basically, yeah, she was using a different brand name, but it's the same tree. Quarter horse. There is the key thing. And then you got folks that say they got a mule tree. Well, how many mules have that tree really been on? Because it's only been recently that the equine world has woke up to mules, and then now the industry is starting to say, oh, look, money to be made if we call it mule, and then there we are. So that's a long way around it, but I hear it all the time, huh, Dave? Yeah,
we do hear it all the time, and we also hear that we hear the flip side, and I think it's important to note that, a lot of times what'll happen is folks will send in an email, and I'll take those pictures, I'll forward them on to Steve, and I'll ask questions because I'm always learning. And I'll say, hey, can you tell me what we're looking at here? And so on one hand, you've got a lot of owners who are really concerned about their animals. They're concerned about their animals tripping. They're concerned about their animals elevating their head. They're concerned about, all the way to bucking and and getting hurt. And so that's one side where it's like, man, this is some serious stuff. But the flip side of that is we get to hear all of the awesome reports, just like Dee gave, of making simple adjustments to correct some of these things so that you can actually get out there and enjoy your ride. Because that's really what we want, right? We want a lifelong buddy. We want a lifelong friend. We want someone who we can go out and share the trail with, who we can share a drive with. So it's fun to get on the other side of that, make a few simple adjustments, and folks just asking questions, and that's the best place to start. I got to say here, we've got, Pam says thank you. We've got Betty from, let's see, Montana. I think it is Montana MO, Montana's MO,
Missouri.
Right? That's Missouri. Okay, Missouri. Sorry about that. I'm about 25 years out of high school here. We got Betty from Missouri. We've got Sam Renee watching from Willow, Alaska again. We've got Dorsey Crow. And let's see. Dorsey says my mule is getting the idea that I'm not. Oh, here's what Dorsey says. Hey, Steve. Got my come-along rope, and I love it. My mule is getting the idea that I'm not messing around now. Wiggle, wiggle, bump, bump. Isn't that fun to hear?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Dee just hopped on. Steve and Dave, this is Dee and David from Australia. It's good to see you guys. Good to have
David,
you here.
Dee, yes.
All right, let's see here. Haley says, hey, Steve, I'm here with my dad, Mark, from Virginia. He has been using your equipment for going on 11 years now, and everything is still holding up. Dave, he also likes your hat, right? Right there? So if you haven't heard the story, I'll tell it real quick, and we'll get to the next question. So I told this 2 weeks ago, I think, but for folks who this is their first time, my kid, my 7-year-old, he was 6 at the time, he's getting ready to go to Spirit Week at school, and it was Western Day. And so he puts on his plaid shirt with long sleeves, buttons it up, puts on his jeans, and then puts on his hat. And, my wife, his mom, looks at him and says, buddy, aren't you going to wear a cowboy hat? He goes, this is a cowboy hat. She goes, no, that's a baseball cap. She goes, no, Steve's a cowboy, and Steve gave it to me. So he went wearing his original ATV hat because a real cowboy gave him this real cowboy hat. I just love that story.
That's great. Yeah, Mark Williams there, when I talked to him today, he says, boy, my daughter's going to be calling me because we're going to watch you on the live stream, and this guy loves to ride. I got him hooked up with another Mark in Virginia, Mark Miller, and Mark is a new mule guy and this sort of thing. He says, Steve, I don't have anybody to ride with. I feel like almost kind of dangerous riding by myself. And I said, hey, I know a guy that I can hook you up with. I'll bet Mark would like to get together with you. So it'd be interesting to see how Mark Miller and Mark Williams get together there. And that's going to be fun. And I'll tell you one more thing. Yeah. Mark Miller is in Virginia, and he's taking his mule all the way to the Hoosier Expo. And I'm going to work with him at the Hoosier Expo and help him with his mule. Now, he's putting his mule in the trailer and going all the way to Indiana to help his mule. Ain't that awesome? That's
going to be pretty cool. That's going to be a lot of fun y'all have up there in Indiana. So the next question that I got here comes from Beth in New Hampshire, and she sent us an email saying, my new mule gets pushy towards me when it's feed time. The rest of the time, he's really good. How do I get him to be more patient? And I can assure you, I am not starving him. What do you have to say there?
Yeah, most mules aren't starved, that's for sure. Here's the thing. When it comes down to feed and these animals, they are used to pushing other animals out of the way. And you can get yourself in harm's way. Now, they can bite, they can paw, they can kick, they can run at you. It can get pretty nasty. It can be pretty tough. So I usually tell folks about a story that I did when I was up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I was helping the Minnesota Zoo up there with their safety program with these perch-on horses. So I asked them, I said, what's your big problem? They says, well, these horses keep stepping on us. They broke legs, they broke toes, and these horses are huge. They got feet on them like this, and they weigh 2,000 pounds. You have 2,000-pound pie plate step on you, that hurts. So I said, well, tell me what happens. They says, well, when you coming in with the feed, the horses, they come all over top of you. And I said, all right, do this. The horse is coming at you, and I'm shaking feed. I'm saying, come on, come on. And everybody's thinking, man, this little short, fat cowboy is going to get mucked out, And here come these two big old Percheron horses, 4,000 pounds coming at me. And I'm shaking the buckets. And as they come, all of a sudden, I kick dirt toward them. I just kicked dirt toward them. And they stopped to look at that dirt. Well, why did that dirt move, Well, when they stopped, then that gave me a chance to go and start putting feed in. And then when they come at me again, I kick some more dirt on them. Now, if they're already in your space, take your boot and kick them right in the shin. Don't hit them in the face. Just kick them in the shin. And that's not going to hurt them. I mean, after all, if a horse wants another horse out of the way, they kick him with both hind legs. That's nothing. But just kick him in the shin and say, hey, get out of my space, and kick him in the shin. And you bet they'll start moving out of the way.
Very, very good. Feed is super important. Being the herd leader is super important. And so what I'm going to do to follow it up, I hope that gives her what she's looking for. But what I'm going to do to follow it up is I'm going to put a link to a feed video that we've got. Talks all about that sort of thing. Talks all about how to get prepped and all that sort of stuff. The next question that I got here is let's see. Will your mule saddle be a good fit for my horse? And basically, I know what you're going to say here, but I'll read it real quick. I have a hard time fitting my little Arab mare. I'm one of those folks who has questionable standards riding horses. Is there any chance that your mule tree might be an option for my horse? I have two Western saddles made by different saddle makers here in Montana and Minnesota. I love them both, but neither of them are a good option. I just thought I'd ask. What do you have to say there, Steve?
Yeah, no, you got a bone structure of a horse, and they're V-shaped A-shaped in their shoulders. Donkeys and mules are V-shaped in their shoulders. Horses carry their weight high. Mules and donkeys carry their weight low. So, no, I'd love to tell you that this one saddle will fit everything, but it's not going to happen. A horse, it just won't fit. I can tell you that over the past 20-some years, I've had two horses where I put that tree on there, and I was amazed at how well it fit, and they were both Mustangs. And the only reason I know they were doing well is because later on, a year or so later, those people contacted me and told me how well their horses were doing. But other than that, I had a trainer in Utah told me that he said, "Man, Steve, I've been riding your saddle on my horses and my mules." And I said, "Don't do that. That saddle is going to bridge. It's going to bridge from the scapula to the hip." Oh, it fits good, fits good. Well, he called me up about 2 months later from the ER with a broken collarbone. And because they finally, the horse had had enough of all the pain, not just that horse, but several of them, but this one particular one, and flat bucked him off. So no, don't put my saddle on a horse. You're going to pay the price. Even if you put a bunch of saddle pads, it's not going to work.
Very good. So the next question that I have, so we're talking about horses and mules. Let's talk about donkeys and mules now. And folks, if you've got any questions, feel free, put them in the comment section there. If you have any commentary or any thoughts you want to add, feel free to do that as well. I'd love to read them out loud and share your thoughts with everyone else here on the stream. And if you haven't shared the broadcast yet, go ahead and do that too. This is going to be a great question for folks to come in on, and it's, okay, you've convinced me, Steve, that that I ought to look into something more than just a horse. So should I buy a mule or a donkey? And here's the actual email that we got. It was from Tony. She says, "I've been looking for an excellent trail mule for quite some time and no luck. Last summer we rescued 4 mini donkeys. First time we'd ever been around donkeys. More wear them out around them, the more that I love them for their calm, kind personality. That said, I was thinking maybe I should be thinking about a mammoth donkey. I've only rode horses. I've had horses for 13 years. Had my horse for 13 years. He's the only one I've ridden. He takes such good care of me. I get nervous about thinking about moving to a different animal, but I'm not ready to give up riding by no means. I'm 51, so I'd love to find an animal that will last my riding days. Would love to hear your input on my situation." So, mule or donkey?
These donkeys are getting to be so popular, Dave, and for the most part, the folks that are that are riding, that are getting up in the age like me, you know, those donkeys really, they're lovable, they're easygoing. Gary Green in New Mexico, he was having a cowboy ride his mule. He sent me an email, and it was horrible what that cowboy was doing to that mule, that donkey. And I said, get him off of there, you get on, you do the trick, you can do it. So, right here in Arizona, Randy Helms, he's also pastor of a cowboy ministry here, runs the equine program for the Arizona State Correctional Department. And they take wild horses and donkeys, and they train them, and then they sell them. Folks, you cannot beat this deal. It's over 300 donkeys here, all colors and sizes and stuff. And hey, guess what? He uses my saddle, you know. And they got over 300 donkeys. They got probably close to 800 head of wild horses. It is quite a program right here in Arizona, folks. And you can come here, pick out your donkey, and you can watch the inmates ride them around and stuff. It is a smoking deal. Now, I said all that to say this. A guy by the name of Eric Lynn, who has that hat that you got on, the original ATV. Eric's going to be here Monday. He has a mule. He usually rides donkeys, but he's got a mule and he wants me to help him, and I'm going to. And so he's also going to bring a donkey, but he's going over to the Florence prison to help them with their donkey program. We're going to do some videoing over there. So we're going to have some videos of the state correctional system training donkeys the way I've taught them how to do it with my saddles and stuff. Good stuff for YouTube, Dave.
That's going to be a lot of fun. You guys are going to have a lot of fun. And for folks who don't know, Eric Lynn, he does work with a lot of donkeys, but he's got a great company out there. Mountain Ridge Gears sells some great pack bags. Yes, he does have the original ATV hats. Fantastic guy, so I'll look forward to hearing how that goes. And yeah, excellent YouTube stuff for sure. So the next question that I got, Dee just sent it in, and Dee says, I have a mule that was over fat and got a big fatty neck. How do I get rid of it?
That's, Dave, that's a major problem. It's called grass founder, and it can be big and heavy and thick. You're going to have to get a stud sweat. And you can go online and you can get them. And it's actually a wrap that you can put on your mule or on your donkey, and it'll help sweat it. But here's the main thing. They have to move. So that means when you're riding, you keep it on. When they're just walking around in the corral, it has to stay on all the time. That's one thing. And number two, you've got to change the diet, because this mule is right on the edge of a diabetic problem, okay? And the mules can't stand prosperity. You've heard me talk about that. And so the sugar content in this feed, the carbohydrates, it's not protein we need to worry about with these mules and donkeys. It's the sugar content of the feed creates that big wide neck across the top of the ribs and the dock of the tail. That right there, folks, it's a killer for these mules and donkeys. And so she's going to have to change her feed. If she goes to my article, Mules Can't Stand Prosperity, I'm sure you could probably send her a copy there, Dave, and read that article and see the feed program that I do, and then go from there. Now, you're going to have to take the product ingredients that you see in the article, go down to your feed store and try to find something similar to it. I'm going to tell you it's going to be really hard to find. In the western United States, you can find the feed called Lakin Light, Lakinlite, and that'll be quite helpful to her. Otherwise, just a straight Bermuda hay. They don't need any grain because that's sugar content.
So I put a link to Mules Can't Stand Prosperity in the comment section. I put a link to Lakin Milling, to their products, yes, so folks can check that out. And I put a link to the, I think it's about a 35-minute video that that you did with James, who was with Lake and Millen at the time, talking about feed program. I put all of that in the comment section, so folks can check that out. Those are great resources. The next question that I got here, let me bring it up. This one, it's from someone who is, using one of your saddles, using one of your saddles, but can't use neoprene because of a skin condition on the mule. Here's the question. Karen says, I recently sent photos with white spots on my mule. This one's actually from a little bit while ago, but I wanted to bring it up here. I don't know if the email went through or not. Can you let me know if you received them? Because I've used your Traillight saddles for a year. I can't use your neoprene sad because of a skin condition my mule has, but I've started to notice white hairs on my mule. So you want to talk a little bit about that? One, what they are, and then two, what the solution is, even if someone is using one of your saddles and still sees the white hairs popping up.
Okay, so white hairs is a scald. And what that amounts to is it's overheating in certain areas. Sometimes it can be in the back of the saddle, middle of the saddle, front of the saddle. Most of the time it's in the front of the saddle. So you got white hairs. It is not the saddle's fault. It is not the mule's fault. It is your fault. And what I mean by that, I've scalded a lot of animals, so I'm just as much at fault as anybody else. I've done better now, but I used to use a lot of wool pad. I used wool. I made wool pads. I bought wool pads. Wool. Wool is good for keeping you warm during the winter, right? You don't wear it during the summer. But here's the problem. What do the wool commercials say? It whisks away the moisture. It takes away the moisture. Well, why do you want to take away the natural lubrication and the natural way to keep the animal cool? You don't. Okay, so here's the deal. When you have, this is your saddle right here. And when you tighten that front cinch, the back of the saddle is going to come up, folks. So if you're seeing white hair in and around that scapula, you tighten the cinch too tight. All right? Now, if you see white hairs along the side, you have what's called grass founder high fat pockets. And that's not the saddle. That is the conformation of the mule. Okay? Now the next thing, with the hip being real high, then you could have white around there. Why is that? Again, conformation. So that's, if you take, we build a saddle for that, it'd have to be 4 inches wide in the front, well, 2.5 inches wide in the front, and about 1/2 inch in the back. And that's only the one tree for the one animal, plus trying to design a leather skirting around it. So going back, I've had people tell me that they've got a neoprene animal that doesn't do well with neoprene. I have I have saddled hundreds of animals, and I've talked to veterinarians all over the United States, and I haven't talked to any veterinarian yet that has said there's any such thing as them being having a problem with neoprene. They've got a completely different skin than we do and this sort of thing. I've had clients bring me mules in the past and said, my animals got, they get rash and this sort of thing from neoprene. Well, my neoprene is completely different than everybody else's, y'all. It is a neoprene. It's perforated neoprene, so that it's like a radiator sitting on their back, or like the cinches on there too. So if she is thinking that she has a neoprene problem and the front of the cinch is causing a rash, that's not from the neoprene, okay? That is from too tight of a cinch. And where people really have problems is when they're using mohair or cotton cinches, because those little amoeba from animal to animal will stay on those cinches, and people don't clean them good enough using Clorox and this sort of thing to kill it, and then they end up with a cinch sore. A cinch sore doesn't always mean that there's a neoprene problem. So I would be really interested to know where on the animal that the neoprene is creating a problem.
Very good. So I wanted to follow that up. If anybody has any follow-up questions that they want to put in the comment section, please feel free to do that. And if you haven't asked your question yet, go ahead, pop it in there, and we'll get to that next here. But the question I want to follow up with, you were talking about getting the cinch sore from the cinches being too tight. And I know for a lot of folks, we're thinking we want the cinches tight because we don't want the saddle to roll. We want the saddle to stay in place. You say loose in the front, snug in the back. For folks, they think, well, no, I want it tight in the front to keep that saddle from moving. Loose in the front, isn't that the opposite of what I want? Talk a little bit about that and the pressure for those two cinches. You always say ride with two cinches, so you can explain that a little bit, and then why the loose in the front, snug in the back.
Yeah, well, it's because the mules are V-shaped in their shoulders, so they're narrower in the front and they're wider in the back. So what happens is the scapula is going up and down like this. Now, here's the scapula going up and down. Watch when you walk your animal, watch that scapula, up and down, up and down. Horses go horizontal. But watch right in behind that. Here's the scapula. Watch this working area where it's usually the white hairs and this sort of thing. Watch that area. You'll see it moving around. When you tighten that front cinch, you just restricted that area. That is the reason, right there, that's the reason that these animals end up getting dry spots, and that's the reason I don't tighten the cinch. Also notice your front cinch is at an angle. With it being at an angle, it's going to pull the saddle forward. It's going to do that. So you're doing just the opposite. You've got a breeching that says don't go forward. You've got a rear cinch that's tight, but yet you've got a front cinch that's tight, and it's fighting against you. It's pulling the saddle. Now, the people that just sent me just before we came on from Ohio, and I can't think of their names right now, they were sending me some pictures of their mule with the saddle, and one of the first things I noticed is that they had a pulling collar on there. And that pulling collar is just bringing the saddle forward. I also noticed that even though they had the saddle back away from the scapula, the saddle had what's called a dropped rigging plate. And that's right where the front D-ring is, that the leather comes down. And they figure they do that so that it keeps the saddle from rolling. Well, on a mule, there's a fat pocket right there. And when you bring that rigging plate down on top of that fat pocket, you got a chance of putting ribs out. Plus, you want to see white, man, that'll really show up. So, lots of different things like that, Dave.
Very good. So you mentioned a pulling collar. I'm gonna put in the comments section, if folks haven't ever kind of examined what they're doing as far as breast collar goes, and if they're using a pulling collar, you came up with a nifty little way of allowing, rather than a fixed position collar, a fluid motion collar that goes with the motion of the animal. It doesn't fight against the breech, doesn't fight against the cinch, but it works in companionship with all of them to allow the mule to have a natural fluid motion when he walks. So I'm going to put that in the comment section there. David Pengelly hops on. Hey,
Coffee
David.
Man.
Coffee Man. Come along, coffee. Coming soon to you.
Come Along Coffee is on its way, folks. Pretty soon, you're going to be able to buy Come Along Coffee and have it sent right to your front door. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be real awesome. What's going to be even more awesome is getting this question for him. He says, will your trail riding bit work with a mule that doesn't neck rein?
It'll work, but it's not going to work like it should. We have to remember that neck reining is extremely important. Now,
what is neck reining? Can you explain what that is first and then answer the question the way you were going to?
Absolutely. So, neck reining means I have my reins in my hands. When my hand goes to the right, you see what little bit I move? Or to the left, see what little bit I move? As soon as I move my hand, the left rein goes against the neck. The right rein comes away from the neck. So, uncomfortable, comfortable. So, when just that pressure from that rein touches it, then the animal wants to move off. Now, it doesn't just come from the pressure of the rein. It originally started right here with my hands, just like we heard DeWitt say, how she just moved her hand and the donkey done it. Look, folks, you don't move your hands a bunch. You barely move your hands. Allow the bit to work. So, David Bengali, you need to start out with the Mule Rider's Martingale. You have one, I know you do. So start out with it. Do the groundwork first. Everybody wants to climb in a saddle and by golly, the magic of Steve Edwards' bit's going to work. No, 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 folks. This bit right here, the correctional mouthpiece, is an awesome bit, but it is meant for refined communication. It is not meant to pull on them. And as soon as you start pulling on them, you're going to create problems. This bit here is where you barely touch the reins. So communication, then when you're riding in the correctional mouthpiece, comes 80% off your leg, 20% off your hands.
One of the things that you said 2 or 3 shows ago that really made a lot of sense to me, and folks, I've been working with Steve for over 10 years now, and I'm continuing to learn things. You know, I'm not a natural horseman, as you would say. I don't got the mulemanship. I'm continuing to learn things every single time we hop on and do one of these live streams. And one of the things you said, Steve, that just allowed it to click for me was you talk about just refined communication, just barely moving one way or the other, as opposed to, moving way. You said, go ahead, take your steering wheel on your car, yank on that, see where that gets you. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, he's right. You're going down the road. When you're wanting to change lanes, it's just ever so slightly do you move your steering wheel to get in the lane. If you wield it like that, you're gonna spin out and you're gonna cause a wreck. That was just a very big aha moment for me to think about why this refined communication and just ever so slightly moving and having that right bit communicating with the right places. It all works in tandem, doesn't it? It all works together in conjunction with one another.
Yeah, everybody wants to make the bit work, and no wonder the animal was so sore. We had a guy I just got the email, and of course you sent it to me too. He said he's got the tongue goes over the top of the bit or goes to the side or something like that, and that's a Crenshaw, Jason Crenshaw out of Oklahoma, and I said, Jason, he's going to get it done. He already put that in there. I'm going to have the wolf teeth fixed, but if you got a mouth in the mule that is not correct teeth-wise, all the bits in the world ain't going to work. Get them happy first, comfortable first. Get that mouth correct, then put my bit on. Then go to training, but get that done first.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question we got comes from Laura Davis Jones, and before I read it, I've got a couple more questions, and so we're going to have some time. If you've got a question that you haven't put in the comment section yet, and you've kind of been thinking, oh gosh, I don't know, they probably already talked about it, go ahead, put it in the comment section. We need you to ask your questions. We're going to have a little bit of extra time here, so I would love to make sure, and even if it's one that you think, we've already talked about, or gosh, I already asked it, and I feel like I'm going to be asking repetitive, and I should have gotten it. No. Put it in the comment section. And if you have a story, just something that you want to celebrate, a breakthrough moment with you and your animal, share that too. We love hearing that. As a matter of fact, I got a couple that I'm going to read. But the question that I have from Laura here is, I have a pretty good trail mule, but she doesn't want to go through any limbs or leaves near her face. And if she does, she wants to run through them. Do you have any suggestions?
Yep. When a mule is doing something on their own, it's not the mule's fault. What I want you to do is go down the road with your car and let go of the steering wheel and see what happens. And then other thing, don't put your feet on the brake or the fuel pedal, and I want you to see what happens. Okay, the car is going to do what the car is going to do. The mule, if you're going through the brush and the mule says, I don't want to go through that brush, you put your hands down slowly, and then you add your legs. So impulsion, that's your gas pedal, and then you put your hands down slowly, then that right there, it gives her the opportunity to go through. Now, if she goes through fast, remember when I always say, when they're not doing something you want them to do, go right, left, right, left. Right brain, listen to me. Left brain, listen to me. So when you're going through that brush, which we do all the time cowboying, it's going to be up to you to control the speed. You're going down a hill, it's up to you to control. Using your right, left, right, left. If it's incorrect, folks, right, left. Do that. That says right brain, listen to me. Left brain, listen to me. All right?
Very good. So a couple cool comments here. We started off the broadcast, so for folks who haven't been with us since the beginning, we started off the broadcast talking about saddle fit, talking about making sure, not putting a mule saddle on a horse, not putting a horse saddle on a mule, the skeletal structure, the way the shoulders of a mule work as opposed to the shoulders of a horse. And we had, Memory Smith Harris says, I agree on saddle fit. I had a cheap, lightweight trail saddle supposedly on a mule tree that I had bought for another mule. I tried it on the mule I have now, and it did not fit her at all as it was way too narrow. I bought one of yours, and it fits her perfect, and me too. It's extremely comfortable to ride. So it's just one of those, making a little adjustment there. I realize the saddle's a big investment, but it is an investment that pays huge returns, both for you, your mule, and the enjoyment of both of you. So that's fun to read. And then Sundance Kid, who is a regular on our broadcast, says, I'm waiting on my saddle to be here Friday. Thanks so much for everything. And that's just a lot of fun to hear. We love hearing that we've been able to help folks.
That's the
go
other
ahead.
Mark. That's the other Mark in Virginia I was telling you.
Oh, is that really?
Yeah,
How
I found
fun.
that out today. Nice guy. He's the one taking his mule all the way to Hoosier for me to train on him.
How fun. That's great. Pam pops in. Pam Hell says, how do you feel about English tack for a mule? So what's English tack, and how do you feel about it?
Okay. I wish I could tell you that I can get an English saddle to fit. It is not. It's basically just a small saddle, no horn, hardly any cantle. They don't weigh anything. I don't think they weigh 8-10 pounds sopping wet. The problem is they only have a front cinch. So with one cinch, it's going to cantilever. The saddle is going to sit on top of the scapula. Everybody that I have seen, both at shows and I've seen on the internet, eBay or YouTube and this sort of thing, that saddle is setting on the scapula. And you got to have a rear cinch. Plus that, you've got to ride with a britchin. I've had people say, well, I'll ride with a crooper. Well, when the tail gets broke on your mule and you've got to put it down because it's got a broken spine, then darn it. Folks, I've already heard it. I've already been there, done that. If you want to reinvent the wheel and try to do it yourself, you can. But I can tell you some sad stories of people using tail croopers on their animals, and people that have been doing it 30, 40 years and thinking they're okay, and then one day, bang, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So I would love to say I can design a English saddle, but I haven't been able to, Dave. I put a lot of money into it. I've talked with English people. It's a wonderful way to ride because dressage and English is the highest form of exact riding that you can get into. It's wonderful because of the amount of leg communication that you use. But I've never seen an English saddle or anything on the internet, folks. Just go look on the internet, look at the pictures. Where's the saddle setting? On top of the scapula. Every one of them.
So she's got a follow-up question. She says, my daughter shows in hunter hack. What would you suggest?
Oh my. Well, even though these kids are, really small and even light, the saddle's going to be on top of the scapula. They're going to see it in a short time. Without a rear cinch and without a breeching, you're up creek. I've had people say, well, they're worried about their breeching. They want to compete in gymkhanas and stuff. My top apprentice from Iowa, Sue White, she competes all the time and competes against horses with her mules and beats them. She uses breeching and she doesn't use a breeching. She'll tell you, and you can see it in the pictures, when she doesn't use a breeching, her mule pays the price, you know. And I know Virgil don't like that. That's another thing. So, ma'am, I really wished I could tell you in hunter hack, and which is a beautiful form of riding, it's not going to work. Look, see where that saddle is, and imagine that scapula hitting on that animal. It's impossible, you know.
So the reason why someone would want to use, I'm trying to understand this.
Yeah.
The reason why someone would want to use the English saddle is because that's a showing saddle. Is that what we're going at here? A showing saddle and competition saddle?
It's competition.
Mm-hmm.
It's mainly done in arenas. They do all kinds of lateral work and this sort of thing, using legs. They are very forward moving. So these hunters and jumpers and this sort of thing, you'll see them hardly sitting on the seat. They're mainly riding off their legs. And so only thing they need is just actually something that they can put their boots into, and then the seat once in a while. But they understand too that the support from the bars was what the animal needs. But it's mainly for, you'll see them in the classes where they're jumping over top of things, or they're doing dressage moves, which is beautiful. And they need, because of the type of riding that they do, they need that type of saddle. Now you can take a Western rider and do cowboy dressage and do a lot of the same moves. It's just that most folks, they get more of a feel for the animal because it's just a little tiny saddle that you're sitting on. I mean, it don't weigh but maybe 8 pounds at the most. First one I ever rode in was in Brazil in 2006, and it was incredible. But anyway, I was not comfortable in the saddle personally.
So thank you so much for those questions, Pam. I hope that gives you something to consider. I hope that kind of, lets you know what your options are and kind of informs it. Would love to hear what you wind up deciding to do. I had Judy Luce pop in. Judy Luce, who has joined us for so many of these broadcasts. Judy Luce popped in. She says she needs to get with you. The edge underneath the fenders on the pad for Miss Daisy has frayed. So we'll connect with you, Judy, and make sure that you get exactly what you need. And she says, I like your sunset one. I like the sunset one too. Who doesn't love a beautiful sunset, right?
Yeah. Sunset pad she's talking about.
Right.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, so the last question that I've got here comes in from Bonita. And Bonita says, can I use your come-along rope for ground driving training? So we see it a lot with riding, training for riding, but for ground driving training.
Well, if she's talking about walking behind and directing the mule from behind, like a set of lines, yes, you can hook it into a bit or a halter, and you can do that. If you're talking about putting it on as a come along and then driving, nope, ain't gonna happen. Because as a come along, it's meant to do ground foundation of turning right, turning left, backing up, and stopping. It is not meant for forward motion, because then when they go forward with the come along, they're pushing on their nose, and the mule is not going to like that. The donkey is going to be very uncomfortable.
Very good. So Yolanda from the Netherlands just popped in. Hello,
hey.
You've made it, Yolanda. It's so good to hear from you. I was actually wondering. I thought to myself today, I was like, you know what? I haven't heard from Yolanda in a little while. I hope she's doing well. And then here you are. So it's good to have you here. So Steve, I've got some trailer instructions that I want to read to you, and I want to hear what you have to say about them. Okay?
Okay.
My tips for loading reluctant animals into a trailer: sing while you're loading. Have some of their droppings shoved not too far inside to the trailer. Have plenty of time so you don't feel pressure. Have 3 people if possible. One winch in the long, soft, long lead rope attached to the well-fitting and properly adjusted headstall, and 2 on the rump rope, 1 on either side. On the count of 3, heave simultaneously. On 3, secure rope wins with ever bit forward movement, so sudden backward action undoes your effort. Be patient. Don't stare at the donkey's face or stand in spare space. You expect him to move. What do you think of these instructions here, Steve?
Better have a cell phone nearby with 911, because somebody's going to get hurt. You don't be pulling and making this animal do this. You can't put a rope behind their butt and get rope burns and stuff. We used to do that 40 years ago. I mean, there's easier ways of doing it, and that is called halter foundation training. You know, if you walk up to that doorway, you've seen it, Dave. I can put that rope across my finger, and just the amount of weight of the lead rope will ask that mule to go in. If when you got a position like this, like we're talking about, it happens a lot. I done an expert witness case on a trailer loading one time, and it sounds like the same scenario. Folks, it ain't important to go riding if your mule is not halter trained. It's not important to put him in a trailer if your mule is not halter trained. If you cannot walk in a trailer with a loose lead rope, why in the world are you riding him? Why? I mean, you're supposed to be having fun here. That don't sound like fun. You got to tie one rope on the inside with a well-fitting halter. It's probably a leather halter, and ropes around the back. Can you imagine the fingers getting hung up in the ropes? I mean, it's. I've already been there, done that. I've had the rope burns. I can prove it. Dave, I had a guy tell me this today, Mr. Price, out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And he says, Steve, I'm watching your videos, and I love hearing this, from people, Dave. They're all saying, man, we've been watching your videos, been so helpful. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. He says, I watch you. He says, I am da-da-da-da. He's a chemist, and he's used to seeing details of this sort of thing. He says, you figure out the small details as to what's going on. And I've watched you, on these videos and this sort of thing. You think things through. Well, you've had all the broken bones that I have. When you get older, it finally pays off. I'm trying to keep folks from doing this now. And I'm not worried about you all. I'm worried about the mule or donkey. What are we doing to them? People already think mules and donkeys are stupid. What do you do with the mule? What do you do with a donkey? Only Jesus rode donkeys, and this sort of thing. Doggone it all, what do we think of the animal? That's frustrating. If that was on the internet?
Yeah, so we had I can't remember where I found that, but it was in response to some folks having a conversation on trailer loading. And when I read that, I just thought to myself, again, I'm not educated in these things, but I remember when you and I went out to Buckeye. This was 4 years ago with Catherine, she's awesome. She's great. And we got to go out there. We got to spend a day. She did private instruction. We got to spend a day with her. And she said, you know what? I've had to have seven guys help me load this mule into the trailer. I don't want to do it. Someone's going to get hurt. And you said, yeah, you're right about that. Well, we went out there, and I think within 45 minutes, that mule was in the trailer. He was in there. He was pawing. He wasn't super happy. But we took about 35 minutes going through doing halter training and working with the halter and walking the mule by his buddies. She had several other mules in the stall, and walking him by his buddies and getting him to focus on what it is you want him to do. And yes, by the end you were able to just very lightly get him walking in and walking out, walking in and walking out. And to boot, you had a slice on your finger. I don't know if you remember this or not. You had a slice on your finger, and it was one of those deals where, by the end you couldn't do that. You just weren't able to do that heavy, lunging in there like what's being described here. And I knew that there was a teachable moment here that you made a great point. If your mule's not wanting to do it, like there's something bigger wrong there than just the trailer. Am I right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've learned enough, and you're right. I'd cut that finger, and it was bleeding even that day. I cut it the day before.
Yeah.
And I had stitched it up myself. Yeah. So, and so you can't even see it anymore. It doesn't even know. But anyway, yeah, it's frustrating, and yeah, there toward the end, because my hand was getting sore, I did use the come along rope on a ring on the inside. But you can see it was just a couple minutes. The mule gave up. He was done. Said, "Okay, let's go ahead and do it." In and out he went. But Dave, we're here to help people. That's what I want to do, and that's what's important to me. Let's make that mule and donkey shine among the equine world.
Absolutely, folks are starting to realize it. Folks are starting to recognize it. Here's the thing, Steve. I see the amount of exposure that these animals are getting because I'm on the internet all day long. I see your stuff. I see so many other folks out there putting stuff online, and more folks are looking at the mule and looking at the donkey. And I love the idea that it really comes back down to, and I've learned this from you, it comes back down to basic communication, understanding the language that the mule speaks, and really having empathy for them and speaking their language and say, look, we're going to make it about you, and we're going to make it about communicating in a way that you understand, because it's going to make both of us happy in that way. And it's just so much fun when we get these reports from people who say, I learned how to communicate with my mule, and we're having so much more fun now. So it's great. Well, another hour has flown by. This has been just so much fun. Folks, if you have any questions that come up that you didn't get a chance to ask today because you weren't thinking, or you get out there and you're training and you run into an obstacle, send us an email. Send it to steve@muleranch.com. You can send it to me, support@muleranch.com. Leave it in a comment section. But make sure to reach out so that you get those little, incremental corrections that you need to make so that you get a great 6 months as opposed to problems developing over the next 6 months. Steve, is there anything else that you want to say before we end this live stream?
No, basically, Dave, we're here to help. I wished I could tell everybody that I could be right there with you and show you every square inch. But guys like Mark Williams, who we talked about earlier in Virginia, he said he was up on the mountains last year over by Tennessee, I think it was, someplace up in the mountains, and these two guys were riding my saddles. He said, how do you like them saddles? And he says, well, we're just having problems. And he's kind of seeing everything, and he's going, and he's been to some of my clinics, and he says, well, what kind of problems you have? And he says, well, the saddle won't stay in place. And Mark says, where's your breeching? And the guy said, breeching? What do we need breeching for? He says, because that saddle's going to go forward, He says, you got to watch that video that Steve gives you. So it's great. A lot of people are sharing what they've learned, and Mark is the perfect example. Like you said, he's been riding my saddles for over 10 years, and we got a lot of other people, riding saddles for a lot of years too. But people are helping each other. And like Mark is an example there, Dave. It's good. We need to be able to take this mule and donkey community and make them shine, and then folks will know what the best is out there, mule and donkey.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yolanda, who is our ambassador for the mule and donkey world over there in the Netherlands. Yeah, there you go right there. Yolanda says, people don't understand the mule. I experience that here every day, and no matter what you tell folks, they simply do not want to listen. They see the mule as a half-part horse with long ears. Even when a mule gets sick here, they don't have knowledge about mules at all. And so, Yolanda, keep fighting that good fight. Scholes, David, and Dee, keep fighting the good fight over there in Australia. We'll keep doing our thing here in the States. And David Pengelly says, great show, guys. David, I thought so too. It's a lot of fun hanging out. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody else, for being here. One final request before you close out is just click share and share this broadcast to your wall, to your feed. We would really appreciate it. That would mean a whole lot to us. And Steve, what do you say we do this again next week?
Hey, I'm all for it, by golly. It's fun hearing people. Dave, there's not a day that don't go by that I don't get an email or a text or something. Man, I love watching that show. So, folks, we're here for you. Let me help you. Let Dave help you. This knowledge needs to be spread around. I not want to keep it to myself. I want to help you out. And thank you for all the great questions.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.